Thank you for joining our webinar on Industry 4.0. Today we are hoping to cover a lot of the confusion around terms used a great deal in industry right now. So IoT, AI, machine learning, digital transformation. There's really a lot out there to get confused about, especially if you're a legacy business. So if you're a modern business set up today, you have a great deal of technologies to pick and choose from, and you may end up with an end-to-end solution that really works for you. But what about the rest of us? What about businesses that were set up 20 years ago, which are actually the vast majority of produce, agriculture, manufacturing, a huge variety of sectors are in that same boat. So this is what we aim to tackle and cover off a few of those points today. I am joined by Stefan Clements from Worldwide, who has over 20 years of experience in the produce industry, has also carried out a variety of digital transformation projects, and also is heavily involved with Worldwide Fruit right now to take them through this process. I'm also joined by Alistair Crawford from LMAC, who has been in manufacturing for longer than he cares to remember, and has carried out a variety of consultancy projects around the world for produce and manufacturing companies, but more recently is continuing his work in digital transformation projects in the produce sector. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Alistair, we'll start with you. As we highlighted, a lot of terminology out there, IoT, cloud, there's a lot to be scared about if you are a business who's been running for 20 odd years and all you're hearing about is AI and how you're going to get left behind and the robots are going to take over. Yeah. Is there anything to worry about, or is it just a lot of noise?
I think definitely there is a lot to be worried about, but I think if we flip that round as well, then there's also a lot to be excited about, because with the convergence of all of these new technologies brings new opportunities. Mm-hmm. And I think we're seeing it as a real good opportunity. As a sector, then, what we're going to show you, the graphic we're showing at the moment is explaining that if you think around where food and beverage sector are, so this visual here is showing the maturity of different sectors, and you can see food and beverage highlighted in the bottom right-hand corner. And what this is showing is the level of maturity in terms of adopting digital mm-hmm. manufacturing tools and techniques. So unfortunately, food and beverage is sitting towards the bottom in terms of their adoption and maturity.
Quite far behind by the looks of it.
They are. And when you think about some of the reasons for that, then if you start at the top left-hand corner and you look at some of the sectors there, you'll see the semiconductor industry, you'll see automotive and aerospace, etc. Now, if you take the semiconductor sector as an example, they are generally new sectors. They've got end-to-end companies that are designing the end-to-end machinery and equipment. Therefore, it's going to be more advanced. It's going to already be interconnected. It can connect, and it's already got. And there's providers that are providing just for that sector, and that's what we see with the automotive and the aerospace sector as well. Is that the sectors are very similar. So most automotive companies are very similar to each other, and the vendors that are out there, once they've designed a solution for one company, it's applicable to all of the automotive sector.
So there's a bigger addressable market, which makes it worth the investment for them.
Yeah, definitely. And then when you compare it to some of the general manufacturing companies, every manufacturing company is slightly different. So they've got a different value proposition, they've got different problems, different needs. Therefore, some of the vendors they're not as attractive to vendors.
No.
Because there's not the same market. So that's one of the reasons. I think the other reason is around the age of some of those industries. So we'll see a lot of these food and beverage companies are quite aged companies. They've been around for a long time. They've got lots of legacy systems and equipment, etc., which also makes it hard to adopt some of the latest tools and technologies.
So a lot of companies in those sectors at the bottom right-hand corner of the chart, they've been around for a long, long time. They use a variety of different technologies that are all meshed together mm-hmm. and often not integrated, I suppose. A lot of manual processes going on.
Yeah, and historically that was a challenge because you didn't have one solution that was designed to fit that particular company. But now with the emergence of all of these best-in-class point solutions, you can now, it's almost a combination of, you can pick the best-in-class solutions, and because they can talk to each other and you've got interconnectedness of them,
Yes.
you can end up with you can pick the right solutions and end up with a really good result.
But that's, of course, out of the box if you're a business today without this historic backlog of technology, which half the time people probably don't even know how it's all linked together, if at all. So, where would we start with this? If you are one of those businesses in that bottom corner of the chart, in that sector, what's the first step out of that part of the chart?
Yeah, it's quite a challenge. And the first thing I just want to address is also there's so much different terminology out there. So you'll hear people talking around Industry 4 and digital transformation. So the first thing we want to just talk through is the graphic that you can see on your screen at the moment. Is the way I like to explain it is thinking about an analogy of exercise and how you're trying to get fit or active. And if you look at the left hand side, everybody's starting from a different starting point in terms of their fitness level, their resting heart rate, etc. Every individual has got an individual starting point, and each individual has got a set of goals, as we can see on the right hand side. So some people are trying to get to the Olympics and be high performing athletes.
Yes.
Some people are just trying to get fitter and healthier. Some people are just wanting to be for looking at longevity in old age, etc. So each company and each individual's got a different starting point and a different goal at the end. And what we think about digital transformation is the journey of getting from your starting point to that target goal.
So that's very interesting. If I can just remind our audience to submit any questions that they may have as we're delving into the meat of the presentation right now, and I'm sure there's a lot of queries coming into everyone's minds. I like your comparison there between the athlete that wants to become an Olympic athlete, or actually is it just someone prepping for latter life? Just so we're sort of clear, are you suggesting that businesses need to be thinking in those terms, as in where they are right now and defining where they need to be, because that will greatly impact how hard they push on this digital transformation trail?
Yeah, 100%. Because if you're thinking around the needs of somebody who's training to be an Olympic athlete, they're going to be far different to
Yes.
somebody who's just wanting to be healthy in their old age. And also, Industry 4 is the tools and the principles that you're going to select to get you from your starting point to that end goal. So if you're training to be an Olympic athlete, then you're going to be using the latest and greatest technology to really get to those marginal gains.
Yes.
Whereas if you're just looking to become fit and active, then you need a different tool set.
I think a lot of businesses out there, especially legacy produce companies, will find that quite reassuring, because I imagine, looking at the landscape right now, there are CEOs and exec teams thinking, my God, I've got to do all of this in one go, or I'm going to get left behind. And it sounds like there's a potential for getting left behind, but it's not quite as bad if you at least know where you are and where you're going. And I think this kind of ties in nicely with a little bit more around your process then. So once that has been defined, what's next? How does that process look?
The slide you can see on the screen at the moment is talking around the framework that we use to help a company start, because like you said before, there's so much technology out there, there's so many things that companies could be doing. So once you've defined that goal of, do I want to become an Olympic athlete, or am I just trying to get healthy in my old age, then you need a mechanism of where do we start.
Yes.
So we use the SIRI framework, which is the Smart Industry Readiness Index, and the visual you can see on your screen is the maturity framework that sits behind SIRI. And this is split up into 3 high-level building blocks, which is process, technology, and organisation. And the reason we aligned with SIRI 5 years ago was we just like the holistic approach of, quite often the focus is around technology and process, and people get left behind.
Okay.
And you're never going to get the best results unless you've got the right processes with the right technology and the right organisation structure. So this is what you can see here. There's 16 different dimensions. It's really split up into, underneath the process, we talk around vertical integration, which is very much about how does information flow from your top floor, which is your ERP system, down to the shop floor to say, this is what we want you to make. How do we capture information against that work order around how we're progressing, and back up? You've got horizontal integration, which is how the data flows across your supply chain from your customer to your supplier. Product life cycle, if you're in the process of, or if you're in the business of developing new products. when we look at technology, we look at it from an automation, connectivity and intelligence point of view, and we look at it not just on the shop floor, but also in your back office. So how automated is your back office processes? Because these often get left behind.
Oh, all the time, all the time. I mean, everybody that we come across working on these big projects is looking at, well, how does it look like on the shop floor? What does it, let's see the big boxes moving around. That's a representation of how well we're doing. But your process seems to suggest it's not just about that.
No, and that's generally, it's nothing to do with the shop floor. Out of all of the hundreds of assessments we've done, very rarely does shop floor automation come out as a priority.
Wow.
But when you think about what people immediately think about when you talk around Industry 4 is people will think about robots, cobots,
Yes.
drones flying around, and more often than not, it's to do with the data and how information flows. So we look at the back office and we give it as equal focus as the shop floor. And then last but not least is around actually the organisation. So what's the organisational structure that we need to realise the benefits? Because the example I'll always use is it's all well and good giving people real-time information and real-time dashboards and insights. If you've not got the culture whereby people can work together collaboratively and solve problems,
Yes.
you've just got fancy dashboards on the wall that aren't really doing anything. So that's how we use Siri is the framework that we use to. And the trick here is you don't have to be and you don't want to be good at all 16 dimensions. Every business is unique, and depending on your type of business, you need to pick the 4 priority dimensions that's going to allow you to achieve your goals.
Right. So that's what I was a little bit concerned with looking at that. I was like, that's a lot of a lot of boxes.
A lot of stuff we need to do.
Yeah, to get good at. And I imagine a lot of business owners will be daunted by the fact and probably just run back to doing things as they were before. So are there kind of, you mentioned 4 areas that are good to start with. Give us just one of those areas in that table that most businesses seem to start with.
One of the most common ones that we see coming across is intelligence, either enterprise intelligence, which means intelligence in your back office, or shop floor intelligence. Fundamentally, that's saying we're going to be using data and data analytics to provide meaningful insights back to people on the shop floor or back to your back office team.
Right.
And it's all of that data. If we can give people real-time or even better predictive analytics to say, based on how things are performing now, we're going to short ship this customer or we're going to have a reduction in yield. If we can start monitoring all the inputs and see that that's coming, we can do something about it. And that, in Siri language, is classed as intelligence.
Okay. So, you see, that's an interesting use of the term intelligence, because again, you use the term intelligence, people are going, oh, the factory is going to run itself, and we're going to get drones flying about exactly the same, robotic arms. But what we're actually saying is giving people real-time information, whether you are at the top or the bottom of the chain, to the same information all of the time, so you can make better decisions, I guess.
Yes, and that could be giving people the right insights. It could be going back to your planning team who think around needing to reschedule, or back to your procurement team. So it could either be going back to a person to then use those insights to make a decision, or if you get more mature, you can send it straight back into the system and the system can make the decision. So an example of you suddenly find that you're using more raw material than you're expecting, that could trigger an automatic purchasing of more inventory, more raw material.
Okay.
So you've just got to decide: do we want the system doing all of it, or
Yes.
or do we want those insights going back to a human to actually make the final decision?
So obviously we have Steph here from Worldwide, who has been involved with a variety of different projects, and I think it would be great to bring you in, Steph, just very briefly, if you can touch on some of those points. How did you find it when Alistair came to you and said, right, these are the 4 blocks we need to be focusing on right now? How hard was it to get the buy-in from everybody around you?
Well, I think the buy-in was quite easy to get once we had that structure. So part of that Siri process is getting people from each department around a table, deciding on what their priorities are, and then kind of filtering them down into what you need. Prior to that, there's a lot of stuff available on the market, and it's difficult to decide what brings the value to you without that Siri assessment.
So once you had the direction, it was far easier to get everyone on board, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And I think people have, if you think around that wider team, if you take a senior leadership team from any business, they'll each have their own view of what the priorities are.
Yes.
You'll talk to a supply chain person, it'll be around inventory reduction, and we need drones going around checking inventory, and we need these things. You talk to the maintenance team, it's going to be about condition monitoring, and each one of them has got a valid point and an argument. But what we've got to think about is what is the collective number one thing that the business should be focusing on, and getting people aligned.
And I think the drones piece that you for stock inventory is a class sort of example of where you get a drone to check your stock, but actually if your stock's correct in the first place, what would you need the drone for? So rather than focusing on something that fixes a problem that shouldn't be there, fix the root cause of the problem.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to look at. Yeah, you hear about drones doing stock takes, but you never stop to, well, how many times are they doing these stock takes and why? It's because a number in the first place was wrong, right? Or
there's a failure further up the line.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what this vertical integration, I presume, is alluding to, ensuring that those numbers are right from top to bottom before you start moving into bigger technology changes.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of pieces to that. So I think the vertical integration is about how you get the communication or the communication around the business. The other part is around the standardization or the optimization of the processes. So getting it right first time.
Fantastic. So, Alistair, we've obviously got the prioritization matrix that we spoke about previously. Can you take us through that on the slide, please?
Yeah, so in terms of where to start, so the example we've just given is you've got a collective leadership team together, whereby each of them have got their own view of what they need to be focusing on. And what the prioritization matrix does is it's an algorithm that sits behind the Siri framework, and we go through these 4 inputs to help an organization prioritize where to start. The first one is today's state, which if you think around those 16 dimensions that we had up on the screen previously, we need to educate that senior leadership team on what do each of these mean and benchmark from 0 to 5 where your current level of maturity. So that becomes the baseline measure of where a company is against the 16 dimensions. That's the first bit. The second bit is we then need to look at a company's cost profile. Where do they spend the most money? So if they spend money on raw materials and labour, then there are certain dimensions that's going to be more important to focus on than others. So rather than just going ad hoc against any of them, let's understand your costs and let's see which costs we can influence by the different dimensions. The third one is looking at KPIs. Similar to costs, we need to understand what are the priority KPIs that business is trying to influence. Does it want to reduce its lead time? Is it trying to improve its quality? Same principle. If you want to, depending on which KPIs are a priority, you would pick different technologies and different solutions.
Oh, I see.
And then the final one is looking at where are you in relation to your competitors. So we look at a sector level, what level is your maturity versus the rest of that sector. Mm-hmm. And the reason we do that is because if there's a big gap between where you are and the rest of your sector is, then it suggests that there's going to be the cost and risk of adoption is going to be lower. The technology is already out there. It's already prevalent. It's already being used in your industry. Therefore, it's going to be a quicker gain than if you're trailblazing. So we take all those 4 inputs over a day, and that helps to prioritize and say, based on your costs, based on your KPIs, based on where you are and where your competition are, these are the 4 dimensions that you should focus on to get the biggest return on investment.
So in some ways, it can be quite reassuring if you as a business are further behind your peers within your sector, because you know that the technologies are probably already out there that you can make some quick wins on to move forward.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. I think the only thing we need to be careful of is you don't just want to copy your competition.
No.
So every company is unique. They need to understand their competitive advantage and they need to pick their unique. But yes, in principle, if it's already been done well within your sector, then the opportunity is there to leverage that.
I think some of that takes us right back to one of the original slides, which is where are you as a company and where do you want to get to make best use of what this evaluation will find. And I presume you help uncover some of that during this process.
Yes, that's the idea of the framework, is to take an organisation on that journey of where are you now, where do you want to get to, getting everybody aligned with what those future goals are, and then understanding how you're going to get there and then bringing that together for them. Yeah.
I think this ties in really nicely with the next slide, which is all around how we prioritize these KPIs. Now, this I found fascinating, actually, especially as it relates, well, maybe you can explain further, but it seems to relate to the vast majority of businesses in this sector rely on these three levers to make changes to their bottom line.
Yeah, when we look at from the hundreds of assessments we've done, what we're showing on the screen here are the common KPIs that get prioritised by those companies and the most common costs that the companies are trying to influence. So on the left-hand side, you can see organisations are trying to get better at planning and scheduling. And this is, Steph, when we were looking at worldwide fruits, this was something that we were heavily focusing on there, wasn't it, around that area?
Yeah, I think a lot of businesses have clunky Excel spreadsheet driven planning systems, and the problem with that is it's really difficult to respond in a timely way to change.
Mm-hmm. And there's lots of variables and things changing across quite a complicated supply chain within the fresh produce
and in a volatile market as well.
Yeah.
Now things can change really quickly, and it's really vital that you respond quickly to those problems, because if you don't, it's expensive.
I think it's amazing that, number one, I can't believe you're declaring spreadsheets are not the answer, because I was always thought they were the answer to everything. But we're unpicking that web of sins now, I think, in a lot of businesses, and you're finding siloed departments that run their own spreadsheet for, I don't know, this special product that they couldn't squeeze into their ERP system, or materials, or whatever it might be. But should we throw something out there right now? How do you feel, coming from various businesses in the sector, about the use of spreadsheets?
I think look, spreadsheets will get you somewhere quite quickly. I think it's the long-term implication of making those spreadsheet-based systems that people don't consider, or it's the technical debt that they create and the stop that they put in place for you being able to make changes to your business. So as your businesses change, they become the blockers within the business, whereas the specifically correctly designed systems for the business allow that agility to change as your business changes.
Yes. Is there a way that we can adequately predict how changing these things in a business, so getting access to the real-time information, making sure we're not always an hour behind on our spreadsheets, can we adequately predict that makes a difference to the bottom line, given these numbers that are on screen right now?
Yeah, I'll take that first.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
If you think around when we're looking at the opportunities that you can influence around there, the KPIs and the costs on the screen are showing that there's a massive amount being spent on raw materials and consumables, which is about 2/3 on there. You're looking at 11% on direct labour and about 9% on SG&A, which is really also includes back office costs. If you think about all of those spreadsheets and manual processes and how long it takes to get information from one system to another system or one person to another, there's two problems there. One is the actual the physical time it takes and the manpower involved in doing that.
Yes.
So by improving that, you're going to get an efficiency gain, and you don't need as many people to process things. And the other benefit you get is, certainly within the fresh produce sector, then the condition of the fruit is changing rapidly, and you need to make the best decisions around how can we best match demand with our current condition of available fruit and materials and resources we have.
Yeah.
That's changing so quickly that one day's delay in getting information through could have a massive impact on getting the best utilisation of that raw material and product. So it will definitely go straight to the bottom line. If we can start getting data flow in real time through the processes, then it will lead to improvements across all of these costs. And that's what we're seeing. The KPIs are planning and scheduling, material efficiency, and how do we get the best utilisation out of the product that we've got. Generally, there's a high cost on assets, there's equipment and people, and quality needs to be a high focus. So these are the general priority KPIs that companies within food and beverage are focusing on.
And the KPIs that you're seeing that actually move the needle, that can actually change what that business makes if you commit and integrate these processes. I think it's very telling what you mention about doing those things that are going to help move the business forward and linking them back to KPIs. Do you think there's something to be said for overestimating what a robotic arm and a drone can do for your business, and underestimating what getting your data right in the first place can actually do?
Definitely. From everything that we've seen, the priorities always come out to be around data information flow and getting some of those things working properly. I think it's easier to see the reason people will go with robots and things. It's easier to see the waste when you're looking at the material flow. So when you're looking at a shop floor and a factory floor, you can see bottlenecks, you can see delays, you can see waste. So we're automatically jumping, whereas you can't see the waste of data sitting there for a week in the background.
So true.
So because it's not visible, it's not the first thing people are focusing on. Is my experience.
You've definitely reframed that for me, certainly.
I think to your point, it's really quite simple. Bad data is bad decisions. You're making your decisions on the data. If the data's bad, you can't make the best decisions.
Yes. No, it makes a lot of sense. And I suppose everybody gets lost in the day-to-day and they don't see these little elements, 0.1% here, 1% here, adding up. And at the end of it, no amount of flying drones and stock takes are going to fix that. And I think hopefully that's helpful for our audience. We've had a fantastic question in from Tom, which he would like to know what change management strategies would you typically use to increase the adoption of digital tools?
Well, I think the first aspect, without stating the obvious, is that it's really about engagement. And I think that's one of the great things that the Siri assessment did for us. It brought people from every department in so that they could get that ownership around the change, so that they were able to contribute, highlight what their priorities were, and really bring those people along the way. I think, there's also a bit around digital literacy and how you train those people along with the upgrades in the technology, and really bringing them along with the ride and making sure that they are completely involved and engaged in the whole process.
From the beginning.
From the beginning,
why.
Yeah.
Why you're doing
Yeah, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
And people they don't know what they don't know. So when you think around, again, going back to that senior leadership team, then they're not generally going to have they don't have a good understanding of what's out there and what can be done.
No.
So they're not going to be challenging their thinking. And a big focus of what we try and do is how do we raise that awareness and get people excited about the future and see what the potential is.
Yes.
And get them all aligned and going, we get it. We're trying to reduce our lead time. We're trying to improve our on-time delivery. We're trying to impact these material costs. Therefore, we should be focusing on that, and that.
Yeah.
I think that's quite enlightening when people realise that that's what they should be doing.
I think it's also a little bit scary, and I think it's that reassurance that that actually it's about optimizing their roles and not replacing the roles. So it's about upskilling rather than replacement.
Yes. It's I think it's rather interesting that there's the phrase that leaders pull and managers push, and I think with a strong enough compelling vision, which it appears is what this sort of process brings to businesses. It gets them back to the basics. What are we in this for? What are the things that matter? What do we actually have control over without just going and buying new stuff? And you can't get that done easily without support from the bottom to the top, right?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, it's about getting that framework, that foundation of framework in place.
Yes. So, Alistair, what... let's fast forward a little bit, I suppose, to the actual evaluation. So, to recap, LMAC provides this evaluation of operation, which is linked to the Siri framework. Siri not being the mobile app, just for anyone that's confused out there. But maybe you can tell us a little bit about when it started and why, and then what's the result? What does the end result look like for this evaluation in terms of the bit of paper?
Yeah, so the outcome that you get from doing the assessment is what you can see on the screen at the moment. And so over the course of 5 days, what we look to do is provide education to those leaders so they understand and they've got a clear aligned vision of the future. We do the benchmarking so they can see where they sit against their competitors, and also over 5,000 other companies that have gone through this process worldwide, because it's Siri is adopted or endorsed by the World Economic Forum as industry best practice. So it's been done all across the world. So we look at benchmarking. As we mentioned, the key to this is prioritising the 4 dimensions for that business that's going to be a focus. So that's the second bit that we give companies. From that, we can take each one of those dimensions and give examples of what kind of technology would be suitable for that organisation, just so it brings it to life a little bit. And then finishing off, fundamentally, we're trying to develop a roadmap so that company's got a high-level roadmap of what they should be doing and in what sequence, so that they feel empowered to go on to the next stage of the journey and start implementing the identified solutions.
Fantastic. Is the data? Is this a community? So does your report go in with a load of 5,000 others, and you go and share that information?
Yes, it does. It goes into a secure portal, and that's where we get the benchmarking results from.
Wow.
So we can't pick out any particular companies, but all of the data from around the world goes into a portal, and we can then use that to do analytics around how is that company performing against their sector.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's one of the benefits, is being able to see where you sit.
Where you stand. When did this framework actually come about? So who decided we need this?
It was 2017. It was developed by the Economic Development Board in Singapore. So Singapore have had a goal of growing manufacturing from 15 to 30% of GDP. And they recognise that they wouldn't do this just by throwing more labour at it. They need to get better at advanced manufacturing and Industry 4 tools and techniques. So they looked around the world at what framework should we use, and they didn't feel that there was one that was appropriate. So they got various consultancies and industry bodies together, put millions into it and developed it. And then it became developed originally just for Singapore, but then started really gaining traction around the world, and now it's used as a worldwide framework.
I mean, that is very interesting, given our introduction around if you're a business today, what would you do? And Singapore are obviously looking to increase that manufacturing base, and they know that they needed a model that was going to work if they were incorporating today. So, that's very reassuring. Steph, I'd like to come obviously onto you, because you've been through this process, and I know time is ticking. So it would be great to understand a bit about what that looked like for you. What worldwide was like, quote unquote, before, and how it sort of changed perceptions, and in general, how's the project looked?
Yeah, sure. So I think, like many other businesses, we got caught up in that hype, and we tried a lot of things, and they didn't necessarily work. And then we spent quite a significant amount of time researching what we wanted to look at. And we quite heavily focused around a book called Design for Digital, which gave several principles of how digital transformation Industry 4.0 should work. And then we went across to some seminars, Smart Industry Expo, and that's where we met Alistair. And one of the great things I remember about meeting Alistair is he had this really simple roadmap in his brochure, and it stuck in my mind. And I was talking about this, and we were saying, how do we create this roadmap? And I said, do you know what? I met this guy, Alistair, at this event, and he talked about this Siri assessment, and he showed me this roadmap, and it was really simple and really clear on what direction the business needed to go in. So we gave him a call up, had a chat with him, and he came in to do the Siri assessment. And what it allowed us to do was really filter down what it was that we should do versus what we thought we should do.
Yeah.
We got everybody from the business into one room, just talked about business priorities, and eventually filtered it down to looking at our communications from shop floor to business decision makers, and getting the right strategic partners in place. So what we did is we implemented a manufacturing execution system. Now, in layman's terms, that's a piece of software that links your physical world with your software systems. And we did that with a business called Olympus Automation Limited. And we made them the strategic partner for our operational technology. So for everything that connected something physical to our information systems. Now, what LMAC and the Siri assessment allowed us to do is to focus on that integration and getting the information moving up around our business. And we also brought on board another company who provided us with a connected workforce solution. And that was really the glue that brought together the integration between our physical world, our ERP systems, and our people on the shop floor to get us that real-time data moving up and down between the business and back and forth.
Just to interrupt there, so by ERP, just in case people are on the call who are not familiar with the term, but that would be Enterprise Resource Planning Tool.
That's correct, yeah.
So that would be your likes of Freshware, Rubicon, Dynamics, Profit. Those ones. So what you're suggesting is that the changes you made helped extract all of that data in a correct form from that, and then bring it around to, forgive me, through the other platforms?
Yeah, so I think traditionally your ERP would have handled everything within your business, but I think the complexity is such now that an ERP can't handle everything within the business. So you really need to focus on how you connect to your ERP and how you get the specialists within their own areas or best in class to provide the services and connect between them to get the data moving backward and forwards.
Got you.
And that's what we talk around when we say vertical integration. That's what we're talking around, is how do we get information from the shop floor back into your system, and what would be a good example of some of that data that you'd want? What would be a good example of some data that you'd want to capture from the shop floor real time that could help people make better decisions, or systems make better decisions?
So it's the real-time data that we get from the production lines, and that helps us with our OEE and our efficiency within the facility.
Yeah.
Okay. So what have been sort of some of the benefits that you've seen from that? Brass tacks, like what's it changed? Is everyone running around happy, smiling? Delivers are out on time? Again, I'm being facetious, but can you give us any tangible changes that you can look and go, wow, that's really made a difference?
Yeah, so I can't go into full details about it, but a massive increase in OEE, real-time data, so we can see how the production lines are running. Live downtime analysis, so we can look at what's stopping the lines running and create tactics to sort that out. And really, the people side has been the one of the biggest things that we've experienced a benefit in. And because we're able to communicate directly with the people on our factory lines, and give them a high five through the red zone system, see how they're doing, and they're able to come back to us with any problems or any issues. And that's all integrated through our tiered meeting structures. It's really been a great piece to get all the people coming together and really glued that technology together for that particular piece.
If I can just delve into that in a little bit more detail, is if you think around a traditional lean manufacturing organisation, they'll put in their daily meetings, cascaded daily meetings. So they'll have a meeting on the shop floor around a whiteboard. There's a problem has occurred. They will record it down on the whiteboard. Then there'll be another meeting, so another hour gets wasted. By the time that problem gets back to, and by the time it gets back to the people that can do something about it, you could have wasted 3 or 4 hours. With having a connected worker platform, what you're saying there is that you can get, if you've got a problem with packaging or quality, that will notify somebody real time, and you can do something about it.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is because it records actions as well. Those actions can't get missed. Traditionally, in other places, you'd say we've got this problem. There's an action.
We just got a question on the screen around what's OEE, because we talk a lot of acronyms. So we best probably explain that OEE is operational equipment effectiveness, or overall equipment effectiveness. Can't get my words out. Which really is looking at how productive are your lines. It's looking at it from a performance, from a quality and availability.
Yeah.
What's the next steps then? So I presume this isn't a job. It's job done, ticked off. We've done everything on the report. What's the next big milestone that you're going to try and undertake?
So like we mentioned before, we operate in a complex and volatile supply chain, and really it's focusing on that planning side of getting the information from our suppliers to our customer and back, and getting that agility in changing to that changing environment.
Got you. That makes sense. If there was one sort of big takeaway from the process so far, what would it be?
So from my perspective, it's that the digital transformation is about people. It's not about technology. It's about understanding what you need to do first and how the technology applies to it, rather than just putting the technology in.
So as much about people
More so about people.
More so about people.
More about people,
Don't lead
business
with
objectives.
technology.
Yeah.
It's like we touched on that early on around Siri puts equal weight around organisation. It's great having all of these technologies and solutions, but if we've not got the right culture, skills, motivation to use them properly, you're never going to realise the full benefits.
It's funny, isn't it, after all of these years of industry, how ultimately it still comes down to people, communication, and good information, and getting that going between people, ultimately people and machines, as seamlessly as possible without a drone in sight. Steph, what would you say is going to happen to those businesses that don't take this seriously?
I think ultimately they'll become inefficient, and the businesses that do adopt it will be the ones that move forward, and the businesses that don't will become the ones that become obsolete or financially unviable.
Yes. Do you think that has an impact on the more human side of those businesses, finding staff, lack of motivation?
Yeah, and I think particularly people want to have purpose within their role, and what they don't want to do is be doing boring, monotonous tasks, and there'll always be an element of that. But actually, if we can optimize and automate those processes and give them something that's far more interesting to do, you'll retain better staff.
No, makes a lot of sense.
And we see that across organisations. If you look at two similar companies, and one is at the forefront of Industry 4 and they're adopting the latest technologies, they're far more attractive to people that are looking for new roles than a company that's stuck in the old ages.
That does make a lot of sense. One question for you, actually, Alistair, is if people know they want to go on this journey, or they think they do, what are the key principles that you think they should be adopting before they go, yeah, let's go ahead, let's jump into this?
Yeah, good question. I think the slide that we started with when we were talking around Industry 4 digital transformation being a journey, and you've got your starting point and you've got your end goal. It is a journey. It's not a small scale project. So I think the first thing is don't treat it as a small project that's going to last 6 months and then you're done.
Right.
It is a journey. It's a transformation. It's an organisational transformation. And what we're looking to do is make sure that people recognise that this needs the right sponsorship. From a strategic level, we need to resource it properly, which means having the right internal champion that's not bogged down with 20 other day jobs and they're trying to pick this up on top of their already busy schedule. So we need to treat it seriously as a transformation. We need to resource it properly. You need to bring in the right partners because nobody out there has got the expertise in everything. So understanding these are the skills, because quite often you're not going to need all of those skills forever. Sometimes you just need to bring them in for a short period of time to solve a particular problem. And then the other thing we touched on was around some of the foundations. So again, we were talking earlier on around there are some Industry 4 tools, but there are some foundations for successful transformation. And they're things like the question Tom prompted earlier on around change management. So by going through a change management program, you need to be a digital transformation program. You need to have good project management and change management skills. You need to have the right culture, data maturity, and data accuracy is going to be critical because, as Steph was saying earlier on, bad data in is going to equal bad decisions. You're not going to be able to utilise some of the data analytics and artificial intelligence. So foundations, getting the right governance in place, getting the right resourcing, make sure your data's in a good position, making sure you've got some good sound processes in place.
Yes.
So you can't automate things if you've not got an inventory management policy and strategy and you don't know how much stock you should be keeping. Automating
You don't know what you're automating by the end of it.
So I think
you could be automating the worst of all decisions.
so there'd be some of the things I'd touch on.
No, that's very valuable. So what I sort of took from that was commitment. Don't jump on this unless you are going to go in, with the same vigor as when you were starting your business, perhaps, knowing that you're trying to win and you're trying to make changes. You're going to commit to this direction. And I suppose the second thing is around budgets. I guess you're going to have to speculate to accumulate. And it's going to be largely around optimizing your processes and spending time and money on time, I guess, people's time.
Yeah, and I think to your point earlier, it's about understanding your processes. So there are fundamental things you need to do. Process mapping being an example. You need to understand your process before you can optimize your process. You need to have the right data, as
Yeah.
Alistair mentioned.
No, well, thank you very much. We've got a few questions, I think, which we are coming up to time now, but so we'll power through these. How might you get senior leadership on board with a digital transformation project? We touched on this briefly, but in a sentence.
I think that getting them engaged in the process, that's what one of the fundamental things that we mandate through this is that we need senior leadership team as part of the assessment team.
Okay.
Because otherwise it's pushed down and given to the operations manager as their
who's got plenty more to do.
Yeah, and it needs to be so
Or
it needs
the
to have
IT
that
one.
sponsorship. Oh, the IT in your case, yeah, it came to the IT team. So I think it's getting them in the room so that you can talk to them. The other thing is they're generally financially driven, or they're certainly performance driven. So we need to show a clear link. It's not just a case of these are the things you need to be doing, but these are the things these are the priority dimensions, and here's the business impact it can have. So by doing this, you'd expect to see a 20 or 30% improvement in your back office costs.
Yes.
So being able to show some clear case studies and examples of similar companies that are doing things and the benefits, because then it brings it to life and gets people engaged.
So clear benefits and setting those incentives, whether they're financial or operational,
Yes.
being really clear on those with everyone from top to bottom. Thank you for that. What are some of the main concerns you're hearing from modern manufacturing in relation to AI?
Well, I think we've kind of covered it a little bit. I think the essence is AI is not a magic tool that solves every problem. I think it's about automating the right things, applying the AI and the ML models to the right processes, and really having the right data in place to be able to make those right decisions. I mean, as I said before, bad data, bad decisions, bad AI.
Yes.
So I think it really is.
I wonder if it's about evaluating as well, what is the best possible decision you're going to come out with AI and without AI? And if you haven't exhausted the without yet, so you can't even get a decent yes or no out, quite possibly you're not ready for AI to make all of your decisions on data which you're not even clear on. So I think that's probably a multifaceted question that maybe we'll take on another time as well. Here's a good one for you, Alistair. What are common skills gaps that companies need to close with their digital transformation journey? Now, you mentioned you might want to bring in project planning and things like that.
Yeah, so there's going to be some specialist skills that you'd want to bring in for a particular project, which is generally quite easy to find. There's also some foundation skills. So if we think around an organisation, then you're looking at your front line. They need to have a good level of basic digital literacy that is quite often underestimated. That just because people carry smartphones around these days, we expect that people are going to feel comfortable with us putting a tablet in and getting people to record actual times against.
Yes.
And it's surprising how hard that changes. So I think a base level of digital literacy across all of your shop floor. You then look at the skills, what does a leader need moving forward? So if we're talking around a digital world, then there's going to be dashboards, there's going to be KPIs, you may have Power BI as a tool. So the leaders need to be able to be comfortable with data, and they need to be able to interpret that and use that to drive the right decisions. So there's some common skills, and then generally it's around data system architecture, how we can go and scope systems, etc. They're the common skills gaps.
But they're quite easy to identify through your process, I imagine. But the theme I'm sort of receiving is a basic level of competency and not being scared of new technology. And just because someone can use Twitter, it doesn't mean they know how to use your app. Does Excel have a place in a smart factory?
I think if we were to say...
I read that quietly because I was like, I don't know how that would be taken by the audience.
I think if we were to take Excel out today, 93% of businesses would fall over. So I think maybe...
I think it depends on the level of smart factory. So I think whilst you've got people in a smart factory, there'll be an element of a need for it, for those quick bringing data down and making a few little quick changes. I think from a system perspective, no. And I think from a lights out, fully automated factory, not at all, because it changes the whole reporting architecture. So our current way of assessing data is we run a report, we look at it. The future way is it's predictive. So you don't need to look at the report. The factory tells you or is self-diagnosing.
Yes.
So I think it depends how far you're looking out.
Yeah, it's got a place for a few more years.
Yeah.
There's plenty more work to do looking at the chart. And final one, what are the common mistakes organisations make when selecting technical solutions?
For me, that would be they don't thoroughly scope and do a good list of requirements. That people rush that bit at the beginning,
Yeah.
and then they don't identify the main pain points and the main problems they're trying to fix. And then it makes it really hard to evaluate a solution, because generally each solution will be about 80% of it will be standard,
Yeah.
and it's the 20% that's the difference that will make it really work for your business. And if those requirements are not really well nailed, it becomes hard to evaluate and say to the vendor, show me how your solution can do this.
Yes.
So I think that would be my advice.
I think there is a graveyard of failed ERP implementations, probably due to that 20% that wasn't correctly scoped. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us, and thank you to the audience for logging in. We hope it was of some interest. There will be a recording that will go out in the next few days. And if you have any other further queries or questions, or indeed if you want any more detail on any of the topics discussed, please email either one of us or any of us on the slide that will be shown at the end of this presentation. So thank you all. Thank you, gents.
Thank you.
Thanks.